Our guest today is Evelyn Cools, a fractional marketing and growth advisor who works closely with early-stage B2B founders to take marketing from 0 to 1. She spent her career helping companies get marketing off the ground, testing channels, and figuring out what's actually worth investing in. She also hosts Growing Startups, a podcast for founders and marketers building from the ground up, which is well worth a listen. In this conversation, we talk about the role fractional marketing can play for early-stage teams, how startups can build trust before they have a long track record, and how founders can make better decisions about where marketing should go first. Welcome to Creative Tangent, a podcast by The Booth. Yeah, so we usually start off the podcast with like a tangent. So something that you're, ranting about or that's got your kind of attention going on. I'm just curious if there's anything on your mind that you want to share.
Ranting about, I don't know. I feel like AI slop is like on everyone's mind, but it's also kind of like overused right now. So I don't know. I still feel like a lot of people are kind of like defaulting to using AI for everything, especially when it comes to messaging. And I recently saw this LinkedIn post where they were like, as a CMO, I saw someone they saw a CMO make the business case for why you shouldn't use AI for these things, because I think like on the C-suite level, there's always going to be that pressure to like make things more lean and use AI for as much as possible. And the CMO was like, well, if we want to sound like everyone else, then that's basically if you use AI, we're going to sound like probably average or under average versus our competitors. So at that point, we can only compete on price. And that I thought was an interesting point and probably one that I'll be making at some point with people.
A solid argument, that's for sure. I remember, I have a graphic design background. Believe it or not, there was a point in time when like stock footage was not prolific as it is now. And there was a very similar argument at that time, was that if you go to use these stock libraries, you could be using it for like your healthcare brand, but then somebody else that has a brand that's in a completely different space could use the exact same image. Pairing that with copy changes the context. And then at a glance, it's like, oh, these two things look the same, but they're entirely different.
Don't even get me started on stock images.
Well, they've improved, but it's still stock.
Yeah, it's still, I think you still have that feeling, that it's a stock image. And that's not necessarily, even if you don't see the image on someone else's site, like there's just something about it. Like, it wasn't made for the brand. And I think with AI imagery, there's also kind of a fine line with that. Like I see a lot of people, they're probably using Midjourney or, any other platform like that. But you have to get really good at prompting to make it look like your brand. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like it's just a continuation of that, but yay for photographers and graphic designers. Like I still just love working with people on things like that.
It's, you can tell, you can smell it when it's AI. That's for sure.
For now. I don't know. I keep like seeing all the deep fake videos and voices, and that part scares me a little bit, but yeah, we'll see how it progresses.
The speed that media runs at and the shortness of the clips, I think, is playing to the advantages of that right now. It's still a little bit tricky with the longer form stuff to fake it, but you're right. This whole AI thing, I think it's on everybody's mind because it just evolves so quickly.
Yeah. And also not like waste your entire day trying to figure it out. I feel like it's such a fine balance, Yeah. Like I'm playing around with Claude Code right now and like all these different types of programs. And I'm like, I gotta like know this stuff as a marketer, but also just as a human. I feel like there's a lot of fear around right now that we're going to make ourselves obsolete if we don't understand these tools. But then there's like work to be done as well during the day. So I don't know. It's tough to do it all. I think everyone was like, oh, AI is going to like make us better or more efficient at our jobs and take work off of our plate. But I feel like we've just added like more work than it's been taking off, at least right now. So I don't know. I feel like people are just working more than they ever have.
I totally agree with that. It made us faster little good workers. But one thing that has struck me about it actually over the last couple of months is the idea of speed. And it's like, it's making an individual faster, but it's they haven't tackled this idea of like sort of institutional knowledge and like relationships that people build at work and how those generate like actually new ideas. So it's like, yes, as an individual, it makes you faster, but then as an organization, I'm not sure that it's like there in terms of making the organization a better place overall.
One of the companies that I'm working with right now is called Workstation, and they're really trying to tackle this issue of like, right now, AI kind of just lives on everyone's computer. Like they're using it all in, maybe they've found like tricks that they like or prompts, or they have like all of their MCP connections and integrations with all their tools. But then the rest of the team and the rest of the organization, like everyone's just operating in a silo. So they make that all come together. There's like a huge collaborative aspect to it, and it's very cool. And I'm like surprised that not more people are focusing on this right now. But with that also comes like making sure that the security is really good, and that like people don't just have access to like all the data in the organization, but that every like marketing team member has the right access levels and all of this kind of stuff. I don't know. There's a lot to think about, but they have a very cool product if you want to check out the collaborative side of AI.
It sounds like it. Well, there's proof that we're moving super fast. Like the minute I start thinking about it, it's like somebody's already solved it.
I know.
That's a good segue into like what you actually do, I guess. So fractional marketing, can you tell us a little bit about what that is and like where you're positioned?
Yes, I feel like fractional has just become more of a thing. Like I know some fractionals who have been operating for many years, but they've kind of had to like pave the way on educating the market on what it is. But I feel like especially in my space, which is early stage B2B startups, fractional hires have become so much more common, because basically the idea is that you can bring in a senior leader, whether that's, a marketer or someone who's going to help with operations or a sales leader, whatever it is that you might be looking for, without the cost of a full-time hire. So what I see a lot of early stage startups doing when they're like budget confined, because obviously any investment you make in those early stages is super important. They bring in like a junior marketer who could maybe execute a lot but doesn't have that high level strategy, or they try to hire someone really expensive, and it's just harder to make that business case in the beginning. So the cool thing about fractional is that you can bring in someone with a lot of experience who does not like a normal, like traditional consultant where they just do strategy. A fractional person really comes in to execute as well, which I think is the big differentiator. And it's also just something I love doing, because my whole career has been at startups, really like being scrappy and being part of the founding team. So for me, that is also a really cool part. I take a lot of like pride in the execution piece and owning that. So I think that's like the interesting part about looking at fractional folks.
So it sounds like you're actually in the room making decisions with them.
Yes, which I don't know if I could handle, not being able to like have my voice be heard or helping make those decisions. In the past, I've only been fractional for about half a year now, but I've always been the founding marketer, or even I've been the first full-time hire, and you just have so much autonomy and people respect your opinion. And I think I just am that kind of person that needs to feel like I can really make a difference. And I love that like brainstorming phase as well. I love working with founders, even though it's like very chaotic sometimes, but I think it's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you were to like kind of describe what sorts of startups were a good fit for fractional, is there kind of like a reflective list or a sort of some ideas that you think some founders should consider?
Well, I think for me specifically, I think fractional is really interesting to get something off the ground for the first time. Or if you have kind of like junior people who are able to execute, but you don't really have that strategic person to help guide them, that's another use case. So that's something that I also do. Like I have one client currently that's light on execution, but it's more me like guiding their marketing team and helping them make the right decisions that are actually gonna like be going towards our business goals. So I think those are like two pieces, but what I think is especially interesting is the first one, where you're trying to get something off of the ground for the first time and you need someone who's done it before. So when it comes to marketing, for example, you've like tried a couple things, but you don't really know what works or what you should be investing more in, or you're growing pretty well, but it's all like word of mouth and referrals, and you really need someone to come in and experiment with different marketing channels, then I think getting someone in fractionally to kind of do that without the commitment of bringing on a full-time person is really interesting. But then also like the type of fractional that you find, I think is important because, and I think this is like an overall like first marketing hire challenge is like finding the right profile, because you could have a hypothesis on like what is going to work for you with marketing, and then you hire someone who specializes in that. But oftentimes that's not going to be the right fit because they are so like focused on maybe one or two things. Whereas you really need someone, we call it like T-shaped marketers, who is going to like be able to understand the broad scope of marketing, I think is really important at those super early stages.
That's super interesting. There's a few things there that we should probably talk about. The one thing that caught my attention first off was just sort of like them kind of understanding the profile of who they should hire. Is it important for a founder to have like already tried some things and potentially failed at them before they make a decision to be like, okay, I should bring in a fractional?
It's kind of like currently the people that I'm working with are also at very different stages. So I think what you do with marketing is just so dependent on where you are. Like, do you already have customers? Like, how many customers do you have? Even if it's just referrals, like the fact that we can look at, like, how did you find those people? You know, what was like the deal flow like? How quickly did they close? How long have they been using the product? What's like their primary use case? What are their main pain points? It's really nice to have all of that like rich information to work from. But then I also work with clients who are like pre-ICP, and we're really just trying to experiment and like figure it out together, because I think the cool thing with marketing is that you can run all these different experiments and it can really inform all these other decisions that you make within the company or with your product, because that's like the direct like channel to your potential audience. So I wouldn't say that you like have to have had tried things. It's always nice if there's data. I think trying things and then not having data is also really common. So sometimes it's not even that helpful. Like if I come in and I ask like, okay, so we've tried these things. What do we feel like is working? Like, and there's no tracking of where demo calls came from, or, you know, just no data is sometimes like more frustrating to me if they've done stuff than, oh, we're just starting from scratch, you know?
Yeah. Are there any other like foundational things that are nice to have existing before, you know, marketing gets into the mix?
And again, it's kind of dependent on stage. Like I'm not someone who's going to be bringing in a bunch of tools if I think it's unnecessary. There's like so much marketing technology that to me, it is really nice to have a CRM. Like if you have something, I'm a big HubSpot fan. I feel like I should become one of their partners with like how much I recommend this, but
yeah, you need a promo code.
Yeah, seriously. I use HubSpot myself for like my own customer management now, or like contact management. So yeah, I think it's really helpful to have something like that set up, especially one that is good for marketers, because you can connect everything. You can start seeing who's visiting your website and what like that customer journey looks like. So I really like it because it'll give the marketer, even if you're not bringing someone on right now, if you have like 6 months or 12 months or however long worth of information on, even if it's like not that many people that you're tracking, but you can start seeing something that's just really nice for a marketer to come in and like have something to look at. So I'm always a really big fan of getting a CRM set up, even if it's just like HubSpot has a sales extension that you can put on your emails so that it automatically will track those things. And that's just like so nice to have, is like an initial list of people and profiles to look at. So I do think that's like a really good foundation on the tech side of things. And then foundations on like more the messaging and ICP side, again, like really depends on where you're at, but it is just nice to have concrete things to work with. So if it is like, okay, we're experimenting right now and trying to figure out what our ICP is, like, let's actually have some like hypothesis profiles laid out so that we aren't just doing like random marketing, but we're really trying to understand like who those personas are. So I think it takes a little bit of extra time to do that foundational work, but if you don't do it, you're just going to end up doing really random stuff with marketing I've found that just like isn't really going to get you anywhere. So that's like a whole other tangent, is random acts of marketing.
Yeah, totally. A lot of times I hear people have a sales problem and really it's like a positioning problem. That's quite common. The other thing I was curious about that you said was this T-shaped marketer. I had not heard that term before, actually. I can kind of picture what it means. Like, you're quite good at a lot of things. But I'm curious where the descender, I think it's called a descender, on the T, what does that represent?
Yeah, so that's the idea that you obviously like understand kind of all aspects of marketing to an extent. But then the T, the descender, is really like the 1 to 3 things that you're most good at. So for example, for me, I would say that I excel at product and content marketing, but then I have like enough of an understanding to talk about like performance marketing, you know, paid ads, or like outbound, all of those things. Like, I know enough to either run that initial experiment or bring on the right person to test it out, or to run programs where I like know what I should be looking for and I know when to recommend it. But yeah, that like the T part of it is like the stuff that you're actually the best at.
Yeah. And I guess that's where the founder's trying to find the right kind of profile for the marketer to hire, is like probably based on a combination of those things and what they think might work for their business at that time.
Yeah. And I think like the main ones that I see being really successful at early stage startups are growth marketers, like the kind of traditional growth marketer, or product marketer. And honestly, like getting on a good product marketer is probably the most interesting thing to do now, especially with like, I think differentiation and positioning is like such a big challenge right now, is like, how do you communicate the value? There's so many tools out there. There's so much noise. We're getting like completely overwhelmed with ads all the time. So like, how can you actually stand out and have a voice and a point of view? And I think product marketers are really good at that. So if I had to pick, that would probably be my top choice.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm a big fan of the kind of mid-funnel content and building the brand and the trust that way. When a company is starting at that 0 to 1 kind of stage, they don't have a lot of proof at that point. How do you start to build confidence in the marketing that you're developing for them?
It's a really great question. So something that I like to reference when we're first starting out is, I don't know if you follow Emily Kramer.
On LinkedIn, I do, yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's like the voice of B2B startup marketing. She has an amazing blog. It's Market One. They have a bunch of really great, like, ungated content. They also have a paid subscription, but they have this framework called Marketing Advantages. And really the idea is that every company has these unique areas where if you invest in that part, you're just going to have much higher ROI than if you try to do these other things. So like a few examples of that are, if you have some kind of like network effect, for example, if I get on Zoom and I invite someone who doesn't have Zoom, they download Zoom. So that's a big one. Another one is like, if the founder has a specific like narrative or background that's really interesting to talk about, and really like leaning into that thought leadership piece. There's all these different areas where if you really take the time to go through, and this is an exercise that I like to do with founders as well, is we like go through the marketing advantages and just talk through like, what do we feel like resonates? Like, where there's probably something in most of them that we could try, but there's always going to be 1 or 2 that really stand out, that feel like super obvious. Like, this is something we have to be doing. So that's what I always like to start with.
Does that branch out to like some of the key employees as well, beyond the founder, like being able to tell their story or hearing things from their perspective?
Do you mean like to figure out what we should try with marketing, or like employee generated content? Because that's like a whole other thing.
Oh, okay. That's different than this founder piece. Okay.
Well, I think like the traditional, you're talking about like thought leadership, right? For founders. Yeah. So I think that's been kind of like a proven concept. Like, everyone knows that founders should be building in public or should be present on socials. Like, if you look at the top tech companies, like how many people follow them on LinkedIn as a company versus like how many people follow the founder or the CEO. It's massive. Like we just want to be seeing people talking about stuff versus brands. Yeah. So that's like a very, like, I don't really have to convince anyone of the importance of that, but I do feel like there's this whole new opportunity of employee generated content, like you mentioned, where every employee is like, they have their own little niche that they can be talking about, and they're an expert in their field. So if you can get people to post about, like, whether it's a customer success manager that's talking about like these really specific pain points that they're seeing, and they're probably going to be the best, like people want to follow them, and they're not a salesperson. So it feels like less icky, you know, for them to be building their network. So I think it's hard to like get people to start doing this unless they really want to do that for themselves. Like they maybe want to build out their personal brand regardless. It takes a lot as the marketer to like really try to get people to do this. But if you have a team that's open to it, I feel like it's maybe like the next big thing in marketing.
We've been internally at our business talking quite a bit about it, and luckily I have a team that supports that kind of stuff. But it was interesting because when you use the word icky when you were describing sales, and I think that's like a common reaction to sales when you try and start talking about creating content and things like that. But there's an interesting perspective that I've heard on it where if you kind of just like remove the word sales, but you're giving people an opportunity to kind of understand what you do, and what you do actually helps them at the end of the day. So if they're more receptive to kind of hearing how you could help, you'll actually make their work life potentially, or their, home life, depending on whatever product you make, a little bit easier, a little bit better, a little bit more enjoyable. As soon as you talk about sales though, it gets weird, but it's like, you're not really doing sales. You're just like sharing how you help people do whatever it is that you do. I like the reframe on a lot of stuff that way. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, but it's a different
interesting angle. I feel like I actually just had kind of this experience with someone who does business development at this agency in India. And this guy has been like commenting on my podcast clips for months and always has super interesting things to say. So we end up having like pretty long conversations in there. And I'm always like, whoa, you get it. Like this guy is not even a marketer, but I actually didn't know because his tagline or his like LinkedIn headline it just says like what they help people with. So It was very much in line with like the things that I do. So we recently, like a couple days ago, got on just a coffee chat because I was like, okay, I feel like we have to talk. Like we always have these like interesting things to say. I love the conversations. Like, thank you for interacting with my content as well. Like, this is awesome. And then it like organically, he didn't even bring it up, but I was like, okay, so like, what do you do? And they actually help a lot of fractionals with, these different parts of marketing execution that you might not be able to do yourself because obviously you're working with multiple clients. So sometimes it makes more sense if you're going to move fast to like have other people do it. It's also cheaper for like the end client to not have you do every single thing. So yeah, it just like very naturally came to that. And now I'm like sending him a couple projects that I'm working on, and I've already met with like part of their implementation team. And I was like, wait, this is the way to do it.
Yeah. We wouldn't have that conversation about like the ick factor if more people were doing it that way. So,
yeah, I think that's where the opportunity is too. Like, even if you are a salesperson, like it's not like you have to hide it, but just like, don't just like get into people's DMs, like straight asking them for a demo.
Yeah, that never works. You build some rapport. I think your idea of like content and trust building is important right now, especially because of your tangent at the beginning of this with the AI entering the picture, Yeah, like if you want to talk a little bit about your podcast and also maybe just kind of those other trust building channels that you think are good for the startup world, that would be great.
I started my podcast like 2 years ago, but recently have been very like strict with myself trying to post weekly, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I love podcasting. I think not just, for me to have interesting conversations, but like podcasting in general, I think is just such a good place for founders to be. And I'll get into a little bit of why, but yeah, basically it's called Growing Startups. I have conversations with other marketers because I think like startup marketing can be quite a lonely thing, since usually you're like a really small team or a team of one. Like I've always been a team of one. So really selfishly, I just wanted to like learn from other people. But I think it also kind of hopefully helps like demystify marketing a little bit for founders that listen. It's really for like startup marketers and founders. That's my main audience, or anyone that's like in the growth space for early stage startups. Yeah, it's just been really cool. But we talk about absolutely everything. And I always try to get like experts on in different things that I don't know that much about, because I really miss that like collaboration that comes from being on a bigger marketing team. So it's been really cool. And it also has helped me understand podcasting more. I started doing that, but then a couple months after, the company that I was full-time with at that time, they wanted to start a podcast, and it was a really cool marketing initiative. We were able to tie it to revenue pretty quickly, just with the guests that we were bringing on, the conversations we were having. So I think podcasting is like such just a great thing to focus on, whether it's, starting your own podcast, which beware, it like does take a lot of work.
It does, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm curious like how you guys are feeling about that part too. But even if it's just like pitching yourself as a guest for podcasts in your space, or more like high level, founder podcasts, VCs have a lot of their own podcasts. So I think it's just a really interesting way to build trust at scale. And I think that's what like great content now does, is especially like putting real people out there, whether it's webinars where you have like your customer success people leading it, or the founder doing video content, doing podcasts, whatever it might be, just like a way to get the people from your company out into the world so that your buyer can really see like, okay, this is how they think. This is why they started this company to begin with. I think startups especially, like, this is not a name a lot of people have probably heard. So you have to work like double as hard to get trust with them. So yeah, there's like many ways to do this. If you don't like video content, I think newsletters can be really cool. Yeah. I just like wouldn't want people to get scared off, because I know video content is like the thing right now, but even just writing really good LinkedIn posts is an art, especially with all like the AI stuff out there.
Yeah. And I find with like webinars and podcasts, the one nice thing about them over the writing, although I totally agree with you, writing's amazing, is there's so much that you can pull from them afterwards. You can almost pull some of your writing from the podcast. You'd be like, oh, I actually said that thing, it was kind of interesting. Or the marketer you're working with can notice that on your behalf and then have some content to pull from it. So it sort of does double duty a lot of times.
Absolutely. Just like getting the transcript from a webinar or a podcast, you can make that into so many assets. Like this is what I live for.
Yeah. That's a gold mine of content, original content.
It is. Yeah. How has it been for you guys though? Like starting the podcast? I know that you have some experience with doing podcasting, but
it's been great. Like it's a nice way to connect with people. We do lots of promotion after the podcast. I learn a lot of stuff from the guests that we've talked to, because I'm not a marketer really. I work within and with marketers, but we do video and animation. So, learning about what you guys go through and the things you're trying to build and the goals that you have, that's been super valuable for me to just kind of understand what's going on there. It took us about probably 2 months to kind of get up to speed in terms of like, what's the plan? What are all the touch points? Because that's important for us too, is like, how are we actually building the story around the podcast that we're creating? But once that was designed, it's been great. Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. I do feel like it's helpful for people to hear this, because I know a lot of marketers either like want to do this themselves, or the founders like, we should start a podcast, which I think is like great. I love that idea. We need like a good reason to do it and a good concept, and like really to understand like everything that goes into it. But yeah, I just think like having, okay, you have like a sound designer or like an editor who's going to do this part. And we need someone to own the process of like scheduling and following up with people and making sure they feel prepared and like sourcing the guests and then distributing on Spotify and on YouTube or wherever you're putting it. So it just, even you need a good system in place, but even if you do, like it takes time.
Yeah. And think through the guest journey of like when you're reaching out to them and why, and then how those touch points become the moment where you're like actually recording the podcast, and then what happens afterwards. And like, how do you make that make sense for your own business? How do you make it make sense for their business? Because that's a big thing too. You're not just showing up to have the conversation. It's like, what's the reason for them to be involved? It's probably not audience, especially at first, right? Because you're not going to have millions of people watching it. So that's not necessarily the reason. So you kind of think through what's in it for them.
Love that.
Just a quick pause to say thanks for listening to Creative Tangent, a podcast by The Booth. We help marketers put strategy in motion through animation and video designed to make complex ideas easier to understand and remember. That often means supporting video content with fresh creative ideas across the whole customer journey, from launching consideration to onboarding and post-purchase. If that sounds like the kind of work you need, you can find us at bythebooth.com. Okay, now back to the conversation. I think a lot of people's gut reaction is that paid is like a shortcut to making it work. And I'm just wondering, like, what's your view on that? Like, why do you think startups should delay paid? Should they delay paid?
Yeah, so I have not been the biggest fan of paid, especially at the super early stage. And this is still like a conversation, maybe more a battle, let's call it, that I have with people, because you're right. Like, I think a lot of people think it's a shortcut, but it is not a shortcut if you haven't figured out some things first. So if you haven't figured out like how you can grow organically, like what kind of messaging is working for your ICP, like once you have a lot of data from other things that you've tried, I feel like that's a good time to bring in ads. And there are like some really scrappy and interesting ways to do it. I actually recently had a conversation with an old colleague of mine called Dom Belmonte. He's an amazing marketer, but he was saying how he's like done some really cool stuff with meta ads recently in the B2B space because it is less saturated. So I think there's a lot of like interesting stuff that I'm still learning about myself, but for the most part, like I rarely will suggest running paid ads, even if it is as an experiment. The only place that I might try it is if we're just trying to see like who's clicking through. So like which message is just resonating more on like an emotional level with people. But I'm not trying to convert people like cold basically from an ad. I think if that's your goal, it's really tough. But if it is to like build more general awareness and maybe get some insights into like what messages are resonating with people on that emotional level, I think that's really interesting. I recently did that with a client where we're trying to figure out like which one of our pain points is resonating the most so that we can use that as like the hero on our homepage. And we actually got really interesting results from that. So I think that's the part that I'm still curious about. But in general, I'm not the biggest fan of paid ads. Like you said, you know, you don't even know how many ads you've seen today. It's probably like more than you can even imagine. So I think people are just like, so like you kind of like glaze over like, okay, another ad. Like how quickly can I skip this? How quickly can I scroll past it?
Is there a time when you're like, oh, okay, now we should do paid? Or a startup should think about doing paid at this point? Like, is there a signal for that?
I think for me, it's usually something I like to layer on top of other things that are working. So, for example, I'm a big fan of partner marketing. And if you have certain like potential partners that you could kind of like sell through, I think that's a really interesting thing because you build trust with that partner and then they already have the trust with your potential client. So that's something that I've been really focused on over the last few years and has been really working. And so if I like build out, for example, like a partner program and I'm getting a lot of traction with that, then, you know, maybe that means I want to retarget those people because I'm like sending them email marketing and they're engaging with it. But it would be nice for them, even if they just see it like scrolling past on whatever platform they are, whether that's LinkedIn or Meta ads, whatever we want to try. There's like a lot of interesting like paid spaces for every niche as well. So like HR folks, where they're looking, or whoever you might be targeting. So it's usually something that I like to layer on top of things that are already working as more of like an additional awareness boost.
If someone's never done any early stage B2B marketing, what do you think they kind of misunderstand about marketing?
I love this question. I think what we misunderstand specifically about B2B is we forget that like the other person's a human. Like you're still selling to a human. Yes, you're like selling to a business, but I think so often in B2B marketing, it's just like defaults to very specific language, and it's all very like corporate. And I don't know, there's like, and I see a lot of people talking about this more, where like B2B marketing doesn't have to be boring.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think people misunderstand. Just like think about when you're putting together an email, for example, like, is this something you would enjoy reading? Mm-hmm. Or are you trying to sound a certain way just because you're a B2B company? So I try to like think about, I always look at my own content through that lens as well, where I'm like, is this actually something I would like stay interested in, or would I click unsubscribe? Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I always wonder where that started. Got a label, and then we started treating like companies as the thing that's being advertised to, and not the human beings that are part of the company. I don't know when that split happened, but you're totally right. It's like we call it B2B marketing now. We still call it that. Do you think there is any difference, or is it just a made up thing?
I think it's a little bit of a made up thing. Obviously, like there's different channels that are more traditionally used for both of those, but I think that's actually like there's a lot more overlap happening right now. Like if you see on LinkedIn, there's a lot more, I don't know, like the YouTube or Instagram style content happening, or like personal, you know, stories and things like that. And then on platforms that used to be purely for like direct to consumer, like, you know, I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed and I'm getting HubSpot ads. So I think it's kind of like blending together. And then the content that I actually really like from companies is more the like direct to consumer style. I don't know if you follow ClickUp, but I think they're a really good example of this, where they really started with like these viral videos of, they like hired a whole team. It was a crazy experiment. I'm going to have someone from ClickUp on my podcast to talk about this, in season 3, which I'm recording right now. But, yeah, it's crazy. It's like super fun videos, really not anything to do with their product, but hilarious and very shareable. So I think it's interesting if you're a B2B marketer who's looking for inspiration, just seeing what direct to consumer brands are doing and how you might be able to do similar things. I think it's like an untapped space.
Sounds like it. I mean, especially where is a use of humor that that ClickUp is going. Yeah,
it's like silly, like singing videos where it's like they're like HR guys singing about HR things, but it's to like very popular songs from like the 90s or something. It's ridiculous, but hilarious. And I think a lot of like HR people felt seen, or it's just like easy to share that kind of silly stuff, you know. And they're a project management tool. Like, you know, you see it enough and you start wondering like, who are these guys? Like, what is this? So it might not feel instantly, oh, like this is the kind of thing we should be doing. Like people are not going to know what we do from this kind of video, but I don't know. It's like all press is good press. I feel like part of that's true. Just in the attention economy, right? Like you just got to do more to like really build connection.
And I think like they obviously stand out in that environment because everyone else is doing probably more traditional, what they would consider like safer content, because the environment they work in is, you know, sensitive or serious. So like we won't touch that. But then in doing that, you blend in, right? So like,
yeah, and it's funny, like even though maybe the industry you're selling to sound like serious, these people are still people. Like they do other stuff in their free time. They're probably not boring people, like just because they work in this industry. So I think it's just something that is good to keep in mind.
Totally agree. just because our assumption of someone's role is that it's not fun doesn't mean they're not fun.
Exactly. I'm so curious though, because you guys do animations, and I think that's also really interesting. I love this type of content. So I'm curious, like, are you seeing requests for more like interesting style videos, or like what are you guys seeing?
A lot of companies hear that we do animation and assume that it's like not serious and it's for like kids. But the reality of it is the companies that get it, right? Because they realize there's a range in what animation and motion design is. And when you apply that to B2B marketing, you can definitely like impact the way someone feels and emotionally reacts to your product with animation. The companies that want to stand out kind of understand like how and where they can utilize that. It's great to utilize to like simplify something, but not to the point of like dumbing it down, but just so that in the attention economy we're in, people can get it really quickly. And animation is great for that, especially in the SaaS world, because the product changes so rapidly that, you know, updating animation is a little bit more accessible than updating like a live action video or something like that.
That makes sense. I mean, we see it all the time, right? It's just you don't think of it as animation necessarily. Yeah. But yeah, it's so prevalent. But I really like your style. I think it's got personality, which is not always the case with these kind of explainer videos or demo videos.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff we do is quite custom usually and like tailored to the brand. But I'm curious because we use the word animation. We moved away from using the words motion design because we were finding that most people in the marketing space were not quite understanding or couldn't create a picture in their head of like what motion design was. So we made a decision to go and out into the market and talk mostly about strategic animation. I'm just curious, like, do you think there's wording that like resonates with the marketing industry?
I might be the wrong person to ask because I come out of the like voiceover / animation space. So
I was thinking that as I was asking the
question.
question, I was like, oh, Evelyn might be.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the thing is like maybe like explainer videos or just like videos for B2B, like more general might work for some people. But to me, I know exactly what you're talking about and I wouldn't know a better word to use. Like, I think you got the right word, but I do feel like if you're not coming from that space, there might be misconceptions around like what that actually means.
Yeah, we do a lot of talking about like storytelling and positioning for the video content that we're creating. Like, how are we actually talking to the customer? And as you go through the process, like with us, we try and tie everything back to that. So when we're making decisions on like art style and scenes within the storyboard, it's all tied back to like the business goals that you have. It sounds abstract, but when we actually break it down in our presentations, we can say like, we're using this color palette for these reasons, you know, whether it's tied to the brand or it's an emotion that the brand wants to portray. All of that can be tied back to the qualities that the brand wants to put forward into the world. And I think it's like underappreciated sometimes with like, oh, it's just stuff moving on the screen. It's like, well, an accounting firm, for example, might want their animations or motion design, the visual side of their business, they might want it to move in a very confident way or say mechanical way to give the feeling of like calculations. Whereas a business that sells, I don't know, popsicles might want it to be more bouncy and fluid and fun and soft, you know? So there's like all these decision-making stages that we go through as we like translate the idea from the written word into storyboards and then into animation and even into sound design.
You guys are artists for B2B.
We try to be. Also, I think to your example of ClickUp, I think there's an opportunity for some brands to be a little bit more expressive with what they do and utilize that to differentiate themselves in the market. I think that's like underutilized.
I totally agree.
I got a couple of like wrap up questions that we usually do if you want to like run through them. Mm-hmm. What's something you wish you understood earlier in your career?
What a question. I think I wish I would have understood that everything is going to make sense, even if it doesn't right now. So I've had a lot of career pivots, we kind of like touched on this a little bit, but I started in the music industry. I actually swore that I would never become a marketer. I went to school for marketing and then left and changed majors because it just felt soulless. And during one of my classes, I heard about like some companies, I don't know if they still do it, but some companies that sold like kids' toys would put in a specific sound at the beginning, like a super high pitched sound that only kids can hear because your hearing range decreases as you get older, so that if they were playing on the ground, they would look up at the TV and watch the ad. And that just felt like in my gut, like I don't want to do this ever. So it took me a while to get back to marketing, but yeah, I was in the music industry. I was a live sound engineer for a while. I used to do like audio engineering for a company called So Far Sounds, which does really cool, intimate performances with like 3 artists that you don't know in interesting spaces. So it could be someone's backyard or a co-working space or financial building. Like it could literally be anywhere. And so that was my thing. I was like setting up live sound, and then the pandemic happened and I had to like really think about what I wanted to do with my life. So I had a bit of like an identity crisis, and all that is to say, like I ended up in the startup world, which I think suits me very well. I started in customer success and then ended up back in marketing. And I think while I was going through all of that, it felt very like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know if this is like where I'm supposed to be. But now, like all those experiences have made me the marketer that I am today. And I'm sure that I'm still going to evolve plenty in my career. But I think it can be really like scary or stressful when you're figuring out what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And I wish I just kind of let that part go a little bit more.
That's great advice. I've also noticed talking to a few marketers over the last little while, oftentimes they have a diverse kind of story that doesn't start with marketing, or it's not super linear. But a lot of the things, because I find that marketers are quite aware and in tune with what's going on in the world and are notice things. I think because of that, they kind of gather the tools needed to do their jobs, which is, all roads seem to lead back to marketing.
I love that. Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. I feel like those people with non-traditional backgrounds are often the best marketers because they have all these different experiences and they think about things in a different way. Like even now, one of my clients is in the customer success management space, and it's like an incredible tool. They're called Agency. Probably the coolest AI tool that I've seen ever, maybe. It's maybe not ever, maybe like top 3, let's say. There's a lot of tools out there as of today. No, they're super cool. But I used to be a customer success manager, so I instantly connect with that audience. And I think, having like a really diverse path and also just being very curious about the world and psychology and reading things, listening to podcasts, just all of that like makes you a better marketer because it helps you connect with people. And that's what we're all trying to do, right? Like taking it back to building trust, but we're really here to like try to build relationships in an authentic way at scale, which is a very tricky thing to do.
Yeah. You got to take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
Is there something that you're particularly more confident about now than you were a few years ago?
Just like in my life?
I don't know, wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, I think like whatever's meant for you is going to happen. Like I've been very disappointed in my life, or at least like, at the time it felt disappointing. But then after the fact, you kind of see, oh, that was like not the job I was supposed to get. Or like, we moved to this, my husband and I have moved around a lot, and every move comes with like different challenges. And sometimes you're like, well, I just like wish we could go back to the place we were before. But like the things that happen now are because we're here as well. And so I don't know. I feel like stop like stressing too much or like forcing things to happen. Like the things that are supposed to happen will happen. And even if things like seem dire sometimes, it's all for a reason, which sounds very cliche, but I really believe it.
I'm still not there with that, because like owning a business is a lot up and down times, right? The economy and just yourself and stuff like that. So it's that is something I also try and remind myself all the time. It's best to not try and control everything, because you can't.
Yeah, I remember in 6th grade, I had like a world religions class, and I was living in Hong Kong at the time. So we were all doing like Asian philosophy and things like that. And the Lao Tzu way of just like go with the flow. I'm very much like doing stuff all the time. Like my life is crazy because I work with startups, but I try to like remind myself of this sometimes when I need to be grounded, because like, it's not that serious, you know, this is all just, life is crazy. Like part of it, you just got to like let it happen, you know?
Yeah, it's, I like the saying, it's burgers and fries. We're not saving lives.
We all have to be reminded of that in the B2B space. Like we got to chill sometimes. It's okay.
My saying wasn't quite as deep as yours. All right. Well, thank you so much, Evelyn. This was great.
Likewise. This was a very cool conversation, and you had really good questions. I feel like I went in some interesting tangents here that I wasn't expecting. So I love it.
And that's our tangent for today. Thanks for listening. If you're still here, you either loved it or you fell asleep with autoplay on. Either way, I'll take it. This show is produced by Cesar Barbosa with original music crafted by Sanctus Audio, mixing by Daruma Audio, and creative and episode support from Kian Nolan and Matt Martell, which is a lot of talent to keep me on track, and it only mostly works. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow the show and share it with someone who cares about marketing, craft, and story, and the messy reality of making great work. Until next time, keep following the tangent. I'm Garris Booth, and Creative Tangent is a podcast by The Booth, the strategic animation practice.